Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Do We Need to Forgive Somebody to Move On? A lot of people have very strong opinions that in order to move forward in our lives, we need to forgive the people that have hurt us in order to be free. And I guess for me, I find it more nuanced. I think sometimes it's imperative that we forgive, and other times it might not be best for us at all. For instance, I had a client years ago whose husband charged $30,000 on a credit card that he took out himself. So the wife had no idea that he incurred so much debt. So one day a debt collector called and she had no idea what he was talking about. And then she confronted her husband. He apologized. He had his own business. He explained it wasn't doing well. And he kept believing that if he put more money in the business, it would get better. And it didn't. And even though he apologized, the wife never quite let it go. She would question all his charges. She would question his actions. She stopped trusting him. The problem with this scenario is that if you continue a relationship with somebody and they have apologized, and of course you have to go through your process of hurt and pain and build trust back up. So it's not like it could happen in a day. But if you choose not to trust that person again and to hold that pain and hold that hurt, the relationship just builds anger and resentment. The person that has harmed you will never have a clear slate, and you will think the worst of them. You will always be in pain when they do something you don't understand. You will jump to conclusions. And eventually, with all the mistrust and with all the fighting, I have seen that resentment builds and leads to actually the destruction of a relationship, no matter how good both people are. And I worked with this woman for a long time, and eventually she was able to forgive her husband, and they are still together today, years later. She began to understand that he was trying to do better for the family, and he should have told her, but she started to have compassion for why he did what he did, and he really understood the pain that he caused her. And through open-heartedness and understanding, she forgave him, he forgave himself, and the relationship actually improved. And then there were other times that moving on is not always about forgiveness. And I think that's where people get tripped up. And this actually happened to me when my husband left. He said things and he did things that for me went against my morals and my values. And he never came to say, I am sorry I did this. I am sorry I said this. So he never came forward and made amends. He was totally fine with his choices and all his choices since then. And at first I was so angry, and I went to some healers and they're like, accept what happened. You have to appreciate the journey that you have. You have to forgive and move on. And I tried so hard to do all those things. And sometimes I tried to do them ignoring my own experience, ignoring my feelings, ignoring my pain, ignoring my anger, because I wanted to be a good person. I wanted to be a forgiving person. I wanted to do the right thing. But doing the right thing, I've learned, is more about what's doing the right thing for yourself. So over time, as I processed my feelings, as I saw what happened, instead of letting go, more anger came up, more hurt came up. And as I processed those feelings, things started to evolve and things started to change for me. And then I got to a point when there was nothing more to process. There was nothing more to say. There was nothing more to know. And through that experience, I found myself accepting what happened. That he left, he chose another life, he didn't want to be with me anymore. But that's where I was. I got to a point that I hit the end of the road. And so for me, it was a radical moment of accepting this is what it is. Like I always say, you're not going to argue with the fact that it's raining out. This was my life. And I chose to move on for me. I chose to move on so I could have a good life. And in order to do that, two things happen. One, as part of my process of letting go, I gave the forgiveness piece to the universe. You can call it universe, you can call it God, you can call it Mother Nature, but I let it go to say, I'm okay if he's forgiven. I was releasing it to something greater than me. I couldn't hold that. I wasn't asked to forgive, and I was okay for him to move on, to have a good life. It just was out of my hands. And the other piece was a lot of self-love and self-forgiveness. And I think that is what really needs to happen. That I needed to forgive myself for anything that I had done, for anything I had said, for any way I acted. There are always two people in a marriage and nobody's perfect. And so I forgave myself for my part. And it wasn't about, oh, I did these things, he should have left me. No, it was I participated. And although I didn't see why the marriage had to end, there were things that I looked at that I wanted to change. And so I had to forgive myself. And it's the Hawaiian prayer called Ho'oponopono. I hope I said that right. And some people use it as a daily meditation or a mindfulness practice. And you repeat the prayer regularly to maintain an opening in your heart, to maintain a flow of energies, to make sure you don't close down, you don't accumulate negative energy. And it also really helped with my self-forgiveness. And the prayer goes like this: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And when I say the prayer, I don't even think about who I'm saying it to. And I say it over and over and over again. And as I say this prayer, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, it just clears everything. It clears resentments, it clears unhappiness, it mostly clears any issue I have with myself, and it just raises my energy. And there are some beautiful versions of this prayer that people have made into song. You can go on Spotify or whatever music platform you own and download some beautiful versions of the prayer, or you could look it up online. But I have found that very helpful. And the second piece was truly choosing myself, loving myself enough to see that this situation, I had to accept it and I had to choose me. And by choosing me, I chose to put my energy in my life. What was good for me, what made me happy, what made me joyous, because I wanted to have a good life. And so obsessing and not accepting and holding on to my anger was hurting me. So that idea that when you pick up a hot coal to throw it at someone, you burn yourself, is true. But I was able to put it down because I accepted the situation and I loved myself enough to move on. Now, some of you listening might be able to forgive even though the person has not asked for forgiveness. And if you are that way, that is a beautiful thing. It doesn't matter if you get there through letting go, if you get there through self-love, if you get there through forgiveness. But moving on has to be you not being caught by what happened. Moving on has to do with not closing your heart because what happened. Not allowing yourself to live, to be joyous, to be happy. That's when we get ourselves in trouble. So whatever your path is back to joy and love and freedom and an open heart, that is your path. And if you do the work, whatever pain you had, it cracks your heart open that you can love even more. I have the capacity to love more today than I ever did. And I'm more free than I ever have been. And I think my freedom has come from forgiving myself and loving myself. And I think that's the key. Getting to a point where we have love and compassion for ourselves and forgiving ourselves for what we said, for what we did, and being kind and loving. And then choosing our life, choosing our path, choosing to move on, choosing to focus on what we still have. And being so excited because we are still here with the hope and possibility that we could still have the life that we want. Don't let the mind fool you, because your heart always wants to be open and your heart always wants to find love again. That's just the beauty of being alive, whether you love what you do, whether you love another person, whether you love your children or your friends, whatever it is. Living a heart-based life is so deep and so meaningful. And I promise you, if you stay on the path and you keep letting go and you keep choosing yourself and you keep loving yourself, you will find your way. And always remember, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe or Year Without Men, they're available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And remember, the audiobook for The Gift of Maybe just came out last week, and it is such an enjoyable way to experience the gift of maybe. And if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.